Hello, welcome back to the channel. Now, in the last video, we talked a lot about how the POC 10 port and the sweep protection redeemer worked, because me, as a amateur aerodynamicist with not a single qualification to my name, but quite a bit of experience and friends in the industry that I ask their opinions of to form my own, because that is YouTube, but there's a lot of self-proclaimed experts on the YouTube, and I am no different, except I'm not here trying to pretend to be an expert. I'm just giving you my opinion from my background. In that video I said I didn't know for the life of me how the Kask with the aero visor, Beyonce hands, or the Specialized with the sock, got the makings of a dad dancing video here, sock, aero visor. I said for the life of me I don't know how they work, and I'm not going to make some educated guess, not even uneducated guesses on them, because I just don't know. So I went away, I asked a few people that I very much respect their opinions on them, and I've got their opinions to basically share. So let's quickly get into it. Let's look at the helmets on, and then quickly come back and have a talk about them.
Big games.
Right, what happened? Well, we've already put one against the other. On me, the Specialized is quicker than the Kask. That we know from the video before. Quick background on helmets. Now, helmet design is interesting because I think when a helmet is designed, initially it is designed for one person. And that person is usually an important bike rider. So if we throw back to the POC 10 port, this came out in 2008, and it first came out on one of the best time trialists in the world at the time, and it is a Swedish company with a Swedish bike rider called Gustav Erik Larsson. He was medalist in the Olympic Games, won all sorts of TTs. He was often beaten by Fabian Cancellara, but ultimately one of the best in the world at the time. Now, this helmet, we know now, performs extraordinarily well on very narrow people. Gustav Erik Larsson is a very narrow person. He's very tall, very rangy, and he's got those very narrow shoulders. On wider people like me, it works, but it's not as like groundbreaking as it is on a rider like Gustav Erik Larsson. Fast forward, it was 2008 that was. Fast forward to 2023, and this is built, and we see it on Remco. I believe this was likely built around Remco, for Remco to win, which he has done. I think helmets are produced and then maybe they're then tested on a few others to see if it works, and kind of hoped for, then maybe tweaked, and obviously they have to then build different sizes. But I think aero helmet design, only aero helmets, I don't believe the same is true of road race helmets, but only aero helmet design I think starts life being made for a particular individual. So this, I'm going to hazard a guess, with Remco. This helmet has been out for a while, and this is not the helmet Ganna uses, but I believe this was produced for Ganna, and I'll explain why soon. So, the results were, on me, this was faster with the standard visor. This was slower with the aero visor by almost 1%. Here's your graph. Interestingly, the gap is less at yaw, and I'm going to talk about this in yaw in a minute. The Specialized was faster with the sock on by actually a very similar gap. This was faster with the sock on by a similar gap to the Kask with and without the visor, which is 1%, and that was fairly even across the yaw angles. Across all of them, it was around about 1%. So those are your results. 1% in a 53-minute time trial is 4 or 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 4 watts, and about 3 kilograms of mass would be the difference in the 2022 time trial national championships of Great Britain. So those are your results. This is faster with the sock. The Kask was faster with the normal visor. Now, let's start with the Kask. When I first saw photos of this, I wondered, because you've got 2 sets of flaps here. They're about 1 centimetre deep, and flaps are now being played with. You can see this picture of Alistair Brownlee. On his arm pads now, there are flaps. And I think it's to redirect airflow. Now, to create an analogy of that, it's redirecting airflows because what's coming behind the initial thing is bigger than you're allowing for the whole body to move through the air. So as one. So if something can benefit another, I mean, that's why a teardrop shape is why it is, because it's bigger at the front and then the tail kind of follows through. It's detachment, keeps airflow attached. It's 2 things. One is you're moving the air in front of you out the way, and the second thing, you're trying to reduce the vacuum of air that's behind you. It's a bit like when you're stood on a train platform and a train comes by, you get pushed away from the train initially, and then you get pulled in when the train goes by. Now, another way, if any of you have been on a bike following a bus, your drag behind a bus is phenomenal because the bus is taking all the drag and you are sat in that vacuum, so that you're sat in still air. And another one would be when a diver is diving off a high board, they churn up the water below so that it is a nicer body for the diver to pass through, a softer body for the diver to pass through. I think that's the basics. The problem would come then if you, as the cyclist, are pushing the bus. If you are physically pushing the bus, then that is an issue. But if the bus is powering itself, you are having a much easier time. So, to try and explain myself, the idea of the deltoid deflector in the POC, it's just a horrible name, isn't it? Your deltoid deflector, sending air out to disturb air so that your shoulders are then passing through that with less resistance. So you're kind of spoiling the air before the main spoiler of the air passes through it, and that hopefully helps detachment reduce around off the side of the shoulders, so it keeps the air closer to your body, thus reducing the vacuum at your back. That's how I think they're supposed to work. So back to the Kask. I think that's what these flaps are for. It's a similar kind of thought process to the POC's deltoid deflectors, to go poof, poof, send it round your shoulders. And the bottom flaps though interested me. Initially when I saw them on pictures, I didn't see this taper off. Now I wondered if this was we know that a bladder down the front is faster on just about everyone. So mass on your front is faster on just about everyone. Now I wondered if that's what this was trying to do, because obviously UCI races, you can't have a bladder down your front. But the way this tapers off, I don't think it's actually considering the front at all. I think it's purely for the side. Now I'm hearing that this is not working on an awful lot of people, but obviously it works on Ganna and Tarling are the 2 main protagonists that are using this visor consistently. Now if we look at some pictures of Ganna especially, and I want to focus on Ganna, if you Google Filippo Ganna time trial, I challenge you to find a photo of him where his head isn't in within an inch position of each other. His head discipline is phenomenal. He's always in the same place, which I think made it very easy to create this for him specifically, because his position is so consistent. And I think this is made to be perfect on him. And I think then probably it was lucky that it was pretty good on Tarling as well. But if we look at some pictures of Tarling, his head his head is moving around a little bit more than Ganna. I mean, I know these are just snapshots, but it does paint a bit of a picture that Ganna's head position is just marvellous, and he's very visual forwards as well. So obviously this isn't aimed to work looking like putting your hands on your wrists or anything like that. This is built to work fairly front on, which is perhaps why they weren't worried about reducing the field of vision of the actual glass panel. So hats off to Kask. They've made a visor that is actually made to make sure the helmet is pointing in the right direction so you can see where you're going. And the last thing with the Kask, yaw angle. Obviously this did get better at yaw. And when a sail on a sailing boat isn't just about the wind hitting the sail, it's also about the vacuum behind, which is why sails rarely sit perpendicular to the wind. If the wind is coming from you watching this, sails rarely sit perpendicular to the wind. Sails sit at an angle, so wind comes in and then goes off, and that creates forward motion. Sails, what's more important is the wind going around the back of the sail, and that is also equally creating a forward motion. I think with this, when we see this picture of Josh just here, he's cornering. Cornering is yaw. I reckon that flap's really helping spill, basically helping the wind avoid his shoulders totally and utterly, which is interesting because the helmet did get better at yaw. And we could there's this picture here of me at 7 degrees in the tunnel, and you can just that flap being quite a bit nearer to my shoulder edge on the outside edge of the body. I think it's interesting. So I might be completely wrong, but it's an educated guess. Right. Now, since filming this again, I've gone away and I think I can explain this better about the Gurnie Flap, and it is a Gurnie Flap, and it also explains why there's a limited amount of vision. Again, I haven't found this out from anyone. I saw a video on Gurnie Flaps appear in race cars, and then this all just kind of clicked into place and made sense. I was wrong when I said it's redirecting airflow. Well, I was only a little bit wrong. The way the Gurnie Flap works, because it is such an aggressive change in direction, it's such an aggressive, what seemingly blockage to the wind, is what you're creating is there's like a bubble of air appears within the flap, and it then sends the airflow, it sort of kicks the airflow out further, but not in an unobtrusive way. So the airflow isn't going like bump, it's not sending it out there, it's just, you're creating such a sort of area of turbulence inside this flap that the air is then bypassing that. It kind of not dissimilar to a cam tail that you'll see on most modern day bikes, where they lob the end of the teardrop off, because they know that the front of the shape does most of the work in creating the back of the shape, and the airflow reattaches in a similar way as to having that material at the end of a cam tail here. So the airflow is, and so what I think this is doing is making the Kask Mistral, which isn't a super wide helmet when you compare it to the Pop Tempor, the Sweet Protection, and now the Giro, the massive Giro. But I think this flap is supposed to make the Kask Mistral much wider than it actually is, and so does the same thing where you're trying to rechannel air out round the shoulders. You're trying to bypass the shoulders completely, and that is what these flaps are doing, but it works in the style of a Gurnie Flap, so the air isn't coming in and just being sent out here. Now, the reason I think this isn't working on a lot of people, but does work on Ganna and Tarling, is Ganna and Tarling are extremely quick, like very quick, and perhaps they're going speeds enough when they're at full flight, so you're talking well upwards of 55k an hour, that this works. Now, I wouldn't mind betting that this does not work at slow speeds, because this is race car technology. This is technology that is there for very high speeds, and I'm just going to put it out there that there's not many people travelling at Tarling and Ganna speeds to make this work. So that's why I think this is working for them, but isn't working for a lot of others. So kind of, I want to go back in the wind tunnel with this now. More age-old thing with wind tunnels, more questions than answer. I want to go back with this and run a test at 60k an hour instead of 55, and see if there's a trend where this becomes much more effective at high speed than it is at low speed. So yeah, there's a little infographic I've shown on the screen as well as to how Gurnie Flaps work. I think they're there to make the helmet an awful lot wider than it actually is without making a wider helmet. So if the UCI get their way and end up banning wide helmets, we might see more Gurnie Flaps, because that is the way of doing it. It's genius. Whoever designed it, that's real outside the box thinking for cycling. And I think that also explains that it's not made to work at this angle staring at your handlebars. It is made to work at that angle, which perhaps is why there's an intentional way to limit the field of vision at the top. So it is, hats off to Kask there. They've done it in a way like, let's make the rider look forwards as well, like Ganna does. Specialised. In my mind, there are 4 interesting things about this helmet. The first one is the obvious one, the sock. The second one is the letterbox, the quite aggressive shape of it, really. The letterbox at the back, why is there a gap here? The third one is this very angular transition between the side of the helmet and the back of the helmet. Why doesn't that same angle happen here? Why is it to the side? And then how flat this panel is. And the final thing that I think is interesting is the how far the visor is kicked out away from the face. Oh, and the fins, these fins thing. Although I think it's a fairly simple shoulder shape. If you want to know what Remco's shoulders are shaped like, this is it. This is almost an exact replica. If Remco came in size large, I think Remco comes in size small for now, but if Remco were to come in size large, this would be his shoulder shape. So those are the 4 things. I think the balaclava, and this isn't Specialized's first foray into internal airflow inside the helmet. Balaclava is simply to smooth off ears, hair, everything messy that's inside the head. This helmet, I think, is designed to have air inside it, and that would also then explain the letterbox at the back. It's an exhaust. Right? That is what I think the sock is for. Begs the question, for helmets that also have internal airflow that is important, would a sock work there as well? Would a bald man or woman, would that be of benefit? And I know in the comments of one of my first videos, it was brought to my attention that Josh Portner from Silka has tested putting a swimming hat on underneath helmets to great success. So I think my theory is not new. Someone else has well and truly got to that way before me. And but you think about airflow through that, and then there's this whacking great big visor. Like, by time trial standards, a very deep visor. We're talking one that's below the nose. So how does the airflow enter? Now I wonder 2 things from this: is why the distance from the face. Now I think that's maybe purposefully creating it's kind of like a vacuum inside, so the air, it forces it in. Like you kind of got maybe a gap to fill, maybe. Educated guesswork, stay with me. And then the second thing is, if this helmet is designed to have airflow through it, what's going to happen if we use it without a visor? Because then we've got all of this space. Honestly, if I'm to go back to the tunnel soon, I think that's what I'm going to be testing. How does this go without a visor? It's not going to look pretty. I'm not going to lie. I am sponsored by Specialized. I do love the brand, but this without a visor, it's not pretty. So yeah, but Specialized, again, are not the first to look at internal airflow. And now if we go back to the POC, the OG, a internal padding system was redesigned, and it's easier to pull it out than show you, with these channels. So from the holes at the front, there is 0, you can see these channels here, there is 0 airflow that is getting to the actual head. So there's 0 cooling happening with this helmet. It is all designed to exhaust out the helmet. It's all designed to be functional airflow. So helmets that are designed to have internal airflow, do we need to be wearing balaclavas for all of them? I don't know. I guess that's more for us to test. So there you have it. Some educated guesses as to why we have flaps on a visor and we have a balaclava inside an aero helmet, and how it works for Ganna and Remco. Thanks for watching.